Hello.
Hello.
Whoa! Hey everyone, we all made it onto the stream. Yay! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us here. And welcome to our webinar entitled NuGet and Beyond. Now, we here at Cloudsmith know that as a package format, NuGet is a core technology for the Microsoft developer ecosystem. And we want to ensure that we're fully meeting the needs of our customers when it comes to NuGet packaging. And we also want to make sure that we're treating our Windows users like first-class citizens on our platform.
Yep.
So to that end, Dan, today we'll be talking about some exciting new improvements we've made to our NuGet repository platform here at Cloudsmith, and also our new support for NuGet Upstreams. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, let's get started. Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, some introductions are in order. Firstly, who the heck are we? So Dan, I'm gonna let you go first.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adil. So yes, hi everybody. I'm Dan McKinney. I work in developer relations at Cloudsmith. So it's my role to sort of educate and to help and assist in any way that I can. So hoping to get some good questions today and to show you some of the sort of unique features of Cloudsmith and how we've brought those features to the NuGet community and the NuGet ecosystem in general.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm Adil Lagari. I'm a solutions architect manager here at Cloudsmith. I'm a sysadmin turned solutions architect and turned manager, and I've spent the better part of 2 decades here wrangling Windows boxes. So over the past 5 or so years, I've gotten more active in the PowerShell and DevOps community. I'm a speaker and author and a blah, 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 you know, that sort of thing. But I think more important for today's discussion, I've also spent the past 3 years in the package management space, right? And here at Cloudsmith and also previously at Chocolatey. Hello, Choco fan. So I guess you could say I know a thing or two about NuGet packaging. So I am also, and Dan, both of us are also very pleased to have joining us today as our surprise guest speaker, my dear friend and colleague in the PowerShell Dev community, Michael Lombardi. Mikey, over to you.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, so I have been in the PowerShell Windows DevOps space for around roughly a decade, and spent a lot of time doing talks and trying to get people to write docs and script code a little bit more cleanly, elegantly. And then spent the last couple of years of my entire professional life doing nothing but open source development and documentation writing. Previously at Puppet, currently at Microsoft. Huge amount of fun, maintain Chocolatey packages and PowerShell modules. And so packaging has stayed near and dear to me because it's the best way to get what I wrote or what other people wrote to any system. Yeah. Everything else is just so much higher pain.
Yeah, no, for sure, Mikey. And now I think also you're doing some game dev stuff too, right? Which you'll be looking at in the future for packaging.
Yeah, doing some interesting work in Golang to build some CLI apps and frameworks and tools. And I'm very excited actually to use Cloudsmith to deliver those things in a much less frustratingly complex way. I don't want to figure out packaging from the ground up if I can help it. And the raw feeds seem like they're going to solve exactly my problem for me. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. We're excited to have you, Mikey. And I just want to put a caveat up front that your views and opinions do not reflect those of your employer. I don't want lawyers from Redmond descending on me here. So let's be clear about that.
No employers, past or present. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But whereas Dan and I, we are speaking for our employers.
Yes.
I'm happy to endorse
Definitely.
everything I say here. Okay, so now we got the introduction out of the way. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Cloudsmith and what we do here, Dan, why don't you walk us through a quick overview?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I would hope that we do have some Cloudsmith users on this webinar, but for those that aren't yet Cloudsmith users, Cloudsmith is it's a global cloud native and universal package management as a service, package management solution. So what we really provide is the ability to sort of build a single source of truth for all your software artifacts, images, packages. And although this is a very NuGet focused webinar, you know, we are fully universal. We support over 28 package formats in multi-format repositories as well. So we are completely global, distributed web application. There's nothing to install. You don't have to patch anything or update anything. It's a managed platform. We have over 225 points of presence on our package delivery network, as we call it. So great for distributed teams or software distribution even. And as I
so
said,
that would be great as well, Dan, for like, as soon as you, just to clarify, if I just a random user, a free user even, I upload my package up into Cloudsmith, it is available in 225 different points of presence.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly
by
that.
default.
It's cached at the edge of the package delivery network. So, performant global access. You don't have to worry about replication or clustering or high availability or anything like that. That's the whole managed platform for you. And of course, we are heavy on security. Lots of really, granular access controls and permissions and the ability to restrict and allow access in a very fine-grained manner. For private repositories, of course, you can have public and open source repositories as well. And yes, as I said, universal. So we love all package formats equally, but with a special focus on NuGet today.
Awesome.
So
thanks.
Actually, Adil, I think this is a very good point now that I've just explained. Yes, for our first poll. So really, we'd like to know more about our users or people who are potentially considering using Cloudsmith. What is your need? What problem are you trying to solve in package management? What is your use case? So we have some options in our poll there, A, to distribute software externally, or B, to manage growing complexity within an organization, which is very popular now. Actually, we see a lot of this. Or a very hot topic at the moment, software supply chain security, to secure your software supply chain. Or maybe you just want to centralize package management on one sort of platform. And for those of you who have just joined the webinar and missed the previous slide, what is a Cloudsmith? That's a perfectly legitimate answer in this case. So yes, we'll leave that up just for a second and people kind of answer, and we'll look at them at the end. So thanks.
Sounds good, Dan. And I just do want to plug, because we have this here, and I think Alan, our CEO, who I'm sure is watching, did remind us yesterday that we have all these great resources, and we sometimes don't even plug them enough internally. So let's do that now. So I will mention that securing the software supply chain is one of those big sort of SBOM buzzwords that are out there now. We did try and demystify this a little bit. We had a webinar last week with the Linux Foundation and Dan Lawrence over at ChainGuard, who's of SigStore and Cosign fame. So feel free to go to our website and check that out as well, because it's available under resources, I believe. Hillary can point you in the right direction if she needs to. But yeah, generally that's we talk a lot about software supply chain security, which is a very hot topic of conversation now, right, Mikey?
Yeah, just a little bit of a nightmare to catch up to for everybody who pretended that it didn't matter forever.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of like, we talk specifically about everything you wanted to know about the supply chain, but we're afraid to ask. So I'm plugging another webinar during this webinar, but hey, it's all good content, right? So just frames of reference for you for later. Okay, so let's talk you through a little bit of the agenda now that you know who we are and what Cloudsmith is. Just so you know what you're getting yourself into today. So specifically, what I'll talk about first of all is what is NuGet, right? As a format, as a packaging format, as a technology, and how it enables folks on the .NET Dev ecosystem. And then we'll talk about specific NuGet flavors, so the communities and tooling around different use cases for the technology. So in NuGet, that's mainly three groups: the C#.NET folks using Visual Studio often as an IDE, and the PowerShell Dev community, and of course the Chocolatey Dev community as well. So we'll highlight those two use cases, and I'll also focus a little bit on the differences, because the packages are very discrete and different. There's some complexity in there that we want to help and solve. So that's the next point. We will talk about how Cloudsmith helps solve and make simple some of these complexities for you in the NuGet ecosystem, and with some of the repo solutions we have around that. Then I will demo and show off a little bit of this actually live for you, so you can understand some of the stuff that we've been working on here, especially to cater to .NET devs specifically. So I'll show off some of the easy stuff that you can do with package installs and stuff like that. But I'll also touch on some of the work that we're doing with PowerShell modules, etc., and making the Cloudsmith CLI available in places like Chocolatey Community Repository. So then after that, at that point, Dan's going to really dive into but wait, there's more. All the additional platform features that you get on this get just part and parcel of being a Cloudsmith customer. So there's a lot more there that we can touch on, but we'll try and limit it to the time that we have here today. And then we'll leave it open for a Q&A at the end as well, because I'm sure there'll be some questions. And we'll have Mikey chiming in with anything from a customer or user perspective as well. anytime he sees fit as well. So sound good? Let's get into the meat of the talk, shall we?
Yeah.
So first of all, what is NuGet, right? NuGet is the official package management system for .NET development, right? Those are NuGet packages. And so that includes a platform and tooling to help .NET developers create, publish, and consume and share this reusable code, right? Why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to? A lot of NuGet devs will build, let's say you write some code to essentially solve a problem. And then now you can have that library packaged as a NuGet package, and other developers now, when they need to solve that same problem, they can just pull down your library, install that NuGet package, and then they're ready to go with the tools available in that package to make their development workflow a lot more efficient. So it encourages the reusability of code and the functionalization and modularization of those things. And so the smallest unit of that is a NuGet package. So a little background for you, NuGet was created in 2010 under the name NuPack. I believe, according to Rob from Chocolatey, I believe it was NU before that. He mentioned once, so I think it was new firstly that it was talked about, but referred to as NuGet or NuPack earliest, and then also moving to NuGet as a format by the Outer Curve Foundation. The Outer Curve Foundation is now very much a precursor to the .NET Foundation, set up by Microsoft. Some people know a thing or two about Mikey. So of course, NuGet packages themselves, what do they contain, right? What is a NuGet package? So it's actually kind of a very universal and multi-use format. So it can be very different depending on the type of package you have, and we'll highlight some of that here. But the main components, sort of to boil it down, are a library, sort of like a compiled piece of code or a binary that actually stores some of the functions and other features of the that you're trying to use. So in the case of .NET, C#, it can be a DLL. In the case of a Chocolatey package, that can be a binary itself, an exe or an MSI. Along with that is related files, so often describing how to use or install the package itself. In the case of Chocolatey packages, this is actually a PowerShell script that does the actual installation, upgrade, or uninstall of the package. So that's part of related files there. And then we have a manifest file, the new spec, if you will, right? And this is the metadata about the package, your version, title, author information, like good details to have there, including dependency format as well, if you have any dependencies for that package are defined here in the new spec. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about NuGet flavors and communities and tooling. And again, I'm going to get into some of this stuff, and I just want to do a quick call out here that this stuff, there's no quiz later, so you don't have to remember all of this, but a big part of what is NuGet and NuGet flavors and communities and tooling, we tackle a lot of this in a blog that I published last week. We published here at Cloudsmith, so I think Hillary can probably drop something in the chat for us there so you can check that out. So that goes into this with a lot of detail, and you also don't need to worry about that. Oh, Hillary's already done it, I think there, Caitlin. Thank you for doing that. So that blog will go in and cover this in detail too, as well, if you don't want to remember all of it now. But I'll do a quick summary for you for the different communities and tooling. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Hillary, for popping that up. Awesome. Demio is neat this way. I do like the format and the little things and the engagement there. Very cool. So let's summarize some of these use cases, right? So there's these three big groups here. Firstly, let's talk about the .NET developer community. Now, this is largely C# folks, but also F# and to a small extent VB, the hangers-on that are out there still running VB code. So the organization behind this is very much the .NET Foundation now, as in NuGet.org, of course, and Microsoft, of course, behind that, who sponsor .NET Foundation. And so in addition to that, of course, language of choice for this is largely C#. So C# devs that are working, in Visual Studio, et cetera. But of course, some F# and VB too. And the tool of choice is ubiquitous here. So Visual Studio is the tool that's used most popularly as an IDE, so an integrated development environment. So Visual Studio is what's used to write .NET code and has some integration built right in for NuGet packaging. And of course, NuGet CLI as well. So NuGet.exe can be used by devs when they're looking to do something or preferring to do it from the command line, or also when they need it in a pipeline. So it's non-interactive. The public repository of choice, of course, is the NuGet Gallery. Now, the NuGet Gallery is probably the largest public repository of NuGet packages. It contains almost 300,000 NuGet packages. So for the sake of our discussion today, it is the largest. So that's a lot of packages that are up there. And so these packages now have moved to NuGet format v3, just a heads up. So NuGet v3 is the newer format. NuGet.org moved from v2 to v3, largely citing concerns around scaling and the availability of NuGet.org. So they had to solve some problems there, and so they upgraded to NuGet v3, and so that's really a re-artifacting of the whole format. So very much not compatible with the other ones in that sense. So in addition to that, largely the composition of these are libraries, so compiled code that other developers can use, so they can quickly import that into Visual Studio, and then it's ready to go for them. They can just start using it from the repository and start using the IntelliSense and the functions right from that code built into Visual Studio. So very cool. So that's the first group. The second group is a group we know very well, Mikey, you and me, so the PowerShell developer community, right? So this is not a formal group per se. I mean, of course, PowerShell team, shout out to Mike Green and Steve Lee over at Microsoft, do exist over there and do push the technology, but largely it's a community of folks here in the PowerShell community. And we show up a lot on Slack and Discord and places like that, available at aka.ms/ps/slack or ps discord, respectively. And of course, Microsoft is behind this technology. The shell father himself, Jeffrey Snover, who wrote it back in the day, or who invented the format. So the language of choice here. Sorry, Mikey, you were going to.
No, I was just going to say it's worth calling out that the language is open source and has been for half a decade now. So it's not, it's Microsoft, but it is all developed out in the open and
yes,
has been open source for a while, which is great because people like me and you get to go and bother them with our stuff all the time.
Exactly. As OSS devs, they're happily we can happily submit our suggestions, and we get a response back to say, we await your PR, right?
It's my favorite answer as a maintainer.
Yeah. Oh, I
PR's
eagerly
accepted.
await your PR. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will call that out a little bit here in the tools of choice too. Obviously, language is PowerShell, but largely here, there's two main ways that folks interact in the PowerShell format. One is PowerShell.exe. So the original Windows PowerShell does come bundled in, and for a lot of sysadmins, of course, they know on every Windows OS, right? So it's in the Windows ecosystem. It comes built into the box, so it's easy to use. But largely, Mikey, like you called out, PowerShell PWSH.exe, the PowerShell, is now cross-platform and open source. So this has made it almost ubiquitous now. It's across all technologies, and a lot of OS's adoption has increased once it was open source there. So the open source version of Microsoft PowerShell there is the very popular format now, and ever growing, and where a lot of the code now, the functionality lands, right? Because according to Microsoft, I believe Windows PowerShell is feature complete, right? It's just more bug fixes and security updates. So all the new development is occurring on PowerShell cross-plat, right? Like, what are we referring to it now? Should we call it Microsoft PowerShell officially, or is it PWSH? Just PowerShell.
Just PowerShell. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Let's stick with that. And so that's obviously increased, for PowerShell devs, the availability and the accessibility of the code too, right? Now, of course, the big public repository is the PowerShell gallery, the PS gallery. Yeah. And so that hosts a lot of the packages. There are over 9,600 unique packages there. The great thing about it is that it's an easy format to be able to push up there. Once you do have your manifest and other things defined, you can push any PowerShell module up there. Now, we know, Mikey, you and I, that sometimes what will end up happening is, out of no fault of the team, it's really just the fact that availability can sometimes be an issue, right? Which is where it's helpful to have your own internal or private repositories, which we can get into.
Yeah, totally. And running services is hard. And calling out to public services from every server is maybe not your favorite thing in the world. No. Certainly not your security team's favorite thing.
Exactly, and it helps to have that level of vetting and internal, verification, which an internal repository affords. So we'll touch on that a little bit. Now, just a quick point here. So PowerShell modules themselves, right? They're just files, scripts, and manifests in a folder, essentially, once they get onto the box and the endpoint. So NuGet here is actually used as a delivery mechanism. So it's what's used to package the actual module itself. So when it's uploaded into a NuGet repository and when it's downloaded from NuGet repository is when NuGet.exe is used. So NuGet actually does under the hood pack and unpack that package for you into a PowerShell module. But so it's a delivery mechanism, so it doesn't actually live in that format. And importantly, this is NuGet v2, so not NuGet v3. So an important point to make. Not yet. Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed.
Well, it's also great for dependency management.
Yes.
That's really hard to figure out on your own, and version pinning and all that stuff. So you get that for free just by using the NuGet package format.
Exactly. That version pinning and dependency is one of the great features of NuGet for sure. So another format that uses similar things. So great segue here. So the Chocolatey Dev community. This is a community, Mikey, also near and dear to our hearts. I'm a fellow Choco fam from back in the day. So it's definitely alive and well. And a lot of sysadmins now use Chocolatey as an easy way to be able to install any package under the sun on all your endpoints, right? I know Stevie is probably in the chat right now, who's a senior SA and manager over at Chocolatey. So he's helped me a lot with the PowerShell module. So shout out to Stevie. I appreciate all you do. And so he for sure is he's very active with this, and he's a big advocate for it. So Chocolatey Software, of course, is the organization that founded this. Rob Reynolds over at Chocolatey Software, and hi Rob, if you're listening. Or watching back. Shout out to Rob for later. Yeah, if he's not here. The language of choice is, of course, the Chocolatey CLI, so choco.exe, and obviously PowerShell also under the hood because it uses PowerShell scripts to do the install of these applications. The tools of choice is the Chocolatey CLI, of course, and that's choco.exe, and also Chocolatey GUI. So there's a GUI format as well. Gary Park over at Chocolatey has done a lot of hard work around creating a GUI to be able to install packages from, as well as for those who prefer a graphical user interface. Now, for PowerShell and for Chocolatey, I will call out in terms of tools of choice, a lot of folks who are in the dev community have obviously moved to Visual Studio Code, which is the popular IDE for many language formats, not just PowerShell-y stuff, but it's definitely useful here. PowerShell has extensions built in for VS Code, of course. Also, Chocolatey does as well. Thanks, Gary. So along that line, composition of Chocolatey packages. Now, this is where they're different, right? Chocolatey packages consist of binaries, and these binaries are EXCs or MSIs, so the actual application installers themselves. And those are attached to PowerShell scripts, which allow you to install, uninstall, or upgrade the application. So a lot of sysadmins end up using this as a way to install packages in any format. And the Chocolatey community repository, of course, contains so many packages out there. I believe they're over, I think there's over 8,000 packages now or something, 7 to 8,000. I'll get called out in the chat here. There you go. Stevie will probably tell me in a sec. But around 7,000, let's say, packages that are up there. So that's every piece of software under the sun you can package under there and is available. Now, if you are interested in Chocolatey stuff, we do, of course, support Chocolatey packages natively in our NuGet repository solution. But if you're interested in using Chocolatey internally as a business or as an organization, they do offer Chocolatey for Business, which is a business offering. I encourage you to take a look at that. It'll make it a lot easier. You can right-click any MSI EXE quickly, package a Chocolatey package in less than 5 seconds. It's like my Choco fam is showing here, Mikey.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because there's two things about Chocolatey, right? The first is, as you kind of obliquely talked about there,
sorry, Ryan said over 9,000 packages.
9,000, yeah, that's right. Over 9,000, yeah.
I don't know if anybody watching has ever tried to figure out how to silently install something repeatably. That process is not fun. Chocolatey
on Windows, you mean?
Yeah, and particularly on Windows, because MSIs can have any number of different flags and features and settings. Chocolatey, one, lets you do that in a very reliable, repeatable way. But two, Chocolatey for Business cuts down that time even further by just automatically doing it, which is great. I've argued everywhere I've ever worked, we should be using Chocolatey to install stuff because it's just way, way easier. And I firmly believe in packaging internal apps, stuff that never leaves the organization.
Absolutely.
Packaging and deploying it with the same exact tooling that you're already using for everything else. Why not?
And all the more reason why you would need an internal repository for that, right? So that's where we come in as a Cloudsmith. If you are a Choco dev out there or using Choco as an organization, please reach out to us because Cloudsmith can help you with the repository piece of this. It's just basically another service you don't need to manage yourself, right? We abstract away a lot of the complexity for you. So great opportunity for our next poll question. How are you using NuGet packaging today, right? Are you using it in the .NET C# world? Like, are you in Visual Studio as a dev? Are you using it with PowerShell? Are you using Chocolatey NuGet packages, or just a mix of all of it, or none of the above? There's no right or wrong answers here, but it helps us to get an understanding of our audience. So feel free to vote in the poll if you can, and we'll take a look at those results later if we have time. And while folks are voting, this is a good segue for me. Mikey, why don't you tell us a little bit, why don't you regale us with how you plan to use Cloudsmith in some of your your gaming stuff?
Yeah, so the first thing to say is that I'm a fool, and I decided that what I should do is take a tabletop skirmish war game. And what's the best way to play that? Obviously, that'd be like a cool GUI or whatever. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing a text-based user interface. If you remember ye olden days when you would start a game in a terminal and then it would like
Zork
you with text, exactly like Zork.
Oh,
that's obviously how you play a war game. That's the clever idea. But so I started going down that road, and I realized very quickly two things. One, I needed to make this, whatever this framework ends up being, extensible by default, because solving extensibility after the fact is awful. I've been there. I never want to do it again. Shout out to Dave Armstrong, who I think might be watching. And
fellow
James
Cloudsmither, yeah.
We worked together on a similar problem space, also using Go when we were all together at Puppet. So I already knew that I wanted to do that. And then I very quickly realized there's not really a package format for your game's modules. Like what does that look like? And so I panicked because I did not want to invent a package format or try to munch something weird to fit. I didn't want you to need anything that couldn't live in the binary. It had to just work from inside of that. And so I DM'd Adil. I said, hey, is there anything for this? And he said, yeah, you can use raw feeds for that. Which just lets me treat, in this case, it'll be a tar.gzip, right? I don't know what I'll actually call it, but that's functionally what it'll be. And then I can treat those as versioned artifacts in a feed. So that's the one thing. The other thing that got me really excited after I started looking is the multi-format repository idea. Being able to package my app for Debian, for RPM, for Chocolatey,
Docker image.
Docker image, for Scoop, for anything and everything, and then I can just have one URI that I send people to and say, if you want to install it, use your tool, point it at this link. That link stays the same regardless of what tools. I don't have to maintain it or remember.
It speaks the language of the tool.
Incantation. Yeah, exactly. And then that just works, which seems really, really good. Because I also didn't want to figure out how to maintain a feed for Debian and a feed for RPM and a feed for NuGet, and that
definitely not.
The idea of that terrified me. So I will be using Cloudsmith extensively for all of my installable open source stuff and for the modules and plugins and whatnot.
And we appreciate your continued patronage.
That's excellent.
The check is in the mail. Thanks for that. It's great. I mean, this is the thing. This is what we get off on, folks. So we enjoy this more than anything, is the idea of being able to, solve problems for users. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the reason why it was invented, right? Back in the day, Lee and Alan, Dan, you were there.
That's exactly it. It's make things easier and solve problems. That's exactly what it is. And package management is a tricky problem to solve, as Mikey said. It really is. So that's the whole purpose.
And that was kind of the origin story, right? A little bit, Dan, just to back up. I think, Lee and Alan folks were actually just trying to solve an actual problem they had. They wanted to be able to throw all packages at one single feed.
That's exactly it. It was built from a pain point that our founders experienced themselves. That was the genesis of Cloudsmith. So it's a pain point we're familiar with, and there's no more truer an explanation than that.
It's very much for devs by devs. Go ahead and make it.
And that's the same thing with both Chocolatey and NuGet, right? Is people who were writing .NET code wanted to share the code in some way that didn't involve copying stuff from repository folders. And Chocolatey folks were like, installing software onesie, twosie, having to manage everything differently and having a different API for everything is not fun. I don't like that. what if I could standardize? So I think most good software comes from a developer trying to solve a problem for themselves and then realizing, oh, actually, this solves a problem for a lot of people. Let me just make this available.
That's pretty much every PowerShell module is the same, right? And .NET library.
Yeah,
so people are just trying to solve problems.
Exclusively.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, wait, other people will have the same problem. Let me develop out loud here.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for both for your input to that. I think it's very interesting to see how like these real world problems bubble up and how we try and solve them with the formats that we have. So let's touch a little bit back on NuGet here. I will outline some of the differences here, right? So each flavor of NuGet, if you will, is unique. Each format has its own different composition, as we talked about with Chocolatey packages, the binaries, right, and the PowerShell scripts, and then the PowerShell modules just be the PowerShell itself, and NuGet libraries being a little different for .NET. So along those lines, every package that you download from these different feeds, you can't just use a NuGet feed from NuGet.org, it's a v3 feed to point to from a PowerShell module install or a Chocolatey package install, because it just won't work, right? And Pester is the great example for this. It actually exists. Pester is a testing framework for those who don't know for PowerShell, and Pester exists in the NuGet gallery, NuGet.org, the PowerShell gallery, and the Chocolatey community repository. All three places, but it's not interoperable, right? Each package is packaged a little bit differently as far as NuGet packages go, and in that different format. So it's where the complexity comes in and some of the challenges around using different kinds of feeds, right? And so also to add to this, as we mentioned before, NuGet NuGet.org citing performance concerns and scalability, of course, moved to v3, right? Which is a re-architecting of the format. And so very much Chocolatey and PowerShell is still on NuGet v2. And they don't necessarily play nice together. So it's not interoperable in that way. So now along those lines, let's talk a little bit about how Cloudsmith makes this simple for you. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you just said, Adil, there's complexities in NuGet and in its use across these three different use cases. Okay, so not only do you have v2 and v3, but PowerShell modules, NuGet packages, and Choco packages. So they're different use cases, different purposes. So how Cloudsmith really helps is in a way we unify this, and I mean we do this across all other package formats as well, but specifically for NuGet, you can very quickly create a repository on Cloudsmith, and that's our universal term. Of course, it's a NuGet feed, and you can very quickly push packages, and they're available. We support v2 for PowerShell, we support v3 for NuGet, we support Chocolatey, and it's all abstracted away for you. You only have to focus then on your artifact, really. We like to oversimplify this to packages go up, packages come down, and I wish it was, that's the end goal, to make it that simple. So supporting all those formats and the variations within is no small task. It really isn't. And I have to give sort of a massive shout to the Cloudsmith engineering team.
Especially David Schmidt.
Especially David, yes, indeed.
Yeah, another David that you used to work with, Michael.
That's
I was going to say.
Such a small world. But, in many ways, sort of, it's only out of their hard efforts that we're able to stand up here and tell everybody about this. So absolutely, they deserve the credit for that. And it isn't a small task. It was a lot of work. I could see the amount of work that it was. It was monumental. So that's just one part of it. So, having that breadth of support that enables you to, serve all those use cases and solve the same pain points, whether you are a Chocolatey user or you're a PowerShell module user or you're a NuGet user. So that's not to be underestimated, really. And then the second thing is, and this is very important, we will have a little bit of a look at this, talk about it later on, upstream support. So what do I mean by upstreams? Well, I mean public package sources. So, typically the public main central repositories for each format. So we support upstreams at Cloudsmith, which means you can still use your Cloudsmith repository as the central location for your packages. And for packages that are not present there, you can configure an upstream source that Cloudsmith will then go off and fetch packages from, and we will proxy and also cache the package afterwards if you so choose, which is a very important use case. We'll talk about it in more detail later, because it touches on several things. It touches on availability, it touches on security as well. It's effectively an isolation layer. So we can revisit that when we get through the demo. And finally, just general code and performance improvements around our NuGet support. So we have supported NuGet itself for a while now. We are now bringing Upstreams, which is available, and it's actually just been made available to everybody this week, I believe.
It's GA now, right?
So it's fresh, hot off the press, as the saying goes. And we've also brought a host of other performance improvements to our NuGet backend, which again has that knock-on effect of being useful and performant then for all of the users of our 3 use cases. So I don't like to overstate things, and I really don't go in for that kind of thing, but it has been a really big effort by the entire Cloudsmith team. NuGet has been a focus for months now to get this ready and to get it out there in the hands of users. And we really want people to try it out. It's so fast. You just get up and running in a minute on Cloudsmith. You can sign up, create a repo, start pushing packages, start consuming packages, and we would love the community to get involved and tell us what they think. I mean, of course, I would say that as somebody that works in developer relations, but I really do mean it, because we need that feedback. We need that feedback very much.
Absolutely.
And we would love people to sort of sign up, activate your free trial, get in and start pushing and pulling packages. So
that's an important
that's
point.
how we can help, and that's what we've been doing.
Along those lines, I just want to bookmark that again to say, there is that 14-day free trial, but you also have, you can get availability of all the advanced features, right? Of something like a team, velocity, ultra, sort of the higher packages. But not only that, we do openly support, free tier and open source users, and we treat you like a full customer. In fact, that's where a lot of folks got started, even Mikey, when you started looking, the open source tier for the open source stuff you're doing. We love open source here, so we're big supporters. So please come on and use the product and test it out and let us know, give us that feedback, because that's exactly how we get better. And full disclosure and full the transparency around that, around getting better, is I want to give a huge shout out to our internal customers, right? The folks who were actively involved in the private beta. So one specific name comes to mind who tested out stuff a lot. So one of our larger customers is Chris Hunt. So Logical Diagram on Twitter. Thank you so much for all your efforts. I know I asked you for permission before to shout you out, so I know it's okay, but I really, Chris has been at talks with us before at Summit and other places, Mikey. So Chris has been integral in our internal testing of this stuff. So thanks so much, Chris, for your help with that. And that's very much, folks, how we do it. We learn from folks like you. And there's Chris, hi, in the chat, so he's showing up. Excellent. But that's how we know. So please come onto the platform, try it out, and see if it works for you, and test out those multi-format repos and the Upstreams specifically, because Upstreams is new and we value that feedback, and that's exactly how we make the product better. So we appreciate you helping us do that. Awesome. Okay, well then, without further ado, I should probably hop in the demo and actually show off some of this stuff live. So let me see if I can get my screen working and it's not going to complain that I need some sort of Mac permissions. Okay, let's slide that over. Excellent. Yay.
Excellent. Okay. Yes.
So here's my Windows VM. Success. So before I go any further, and Dan, thank you for this in the rehearsal. You did reference this before, so it's important for me to show we have nothing up our sleeve here. So I'm going to show off my Cloudsmith org here. This is Cloudsmith demo, actually, and so we have some demo repositories here in different formats. Specifically, I'm going to highlight the NuGet repository for the .NET stuff, the PowerShell repository for the PowerShell modules, and the Choco repository. So let's look at NuGet up here, up front, really quick. So I just have the one package here, Humanizer, in here as a NuGet package for .NET. And so we know that that's a V3 package for NuGet V3, so that's how it's going to be understood there. So the tool of choice, of course, in this case is Visual Studio. So if it's going to come up for me, if it doesn't, I will make it come up in a second by forcing it.
Very
I'm
good,
not going to. We've done enough sacrifices to the demo gods to know that things don't always run exactly the way you want.
That's how you know it's live.
So, we're doing it live. So this is a very simple program I have here. This is a very simple project in .NET C#. So it's going to pop up and say, do you want to do this? No, I don't. So here we go. It's going to do is it's going to present as a console app to say, hello, Cloudsmith user, you have the following Cloudsmith version, and then just extracts out the API and CLI versions for you. So this is going to run here and it'll say, yeah, that's fine. I just want to show you that it does work. I think I did that a little bit quick, so I'm going to go a little bit slower the second time here and show you, yep, you have the Cloudsmith CLI API version. There you go. So that presented that. So that's a really simple app I have here. Now, of course, I want to be able to extend this app. Maybe I have some dates and times I want to use in a human readable format or other formats like that. So along those lines, what I can do is I can quickly import a NuGet package into here as a library that I can just start using the IntelliSense and the code for right in my package. And I simply can do that in the project folder under manage NuGet packages. So this will bring up the GUI here for my NuGet sources. And you can see I have the Cloudsmith demo NuGet defined here. In the gear icon, I can actually define other repositories, NuGet repositories right in here. So it gives you a nice GUI to interact with it. That's why a lot of devs like it. So we have the ability to define multiple repos. I am using that NuGet v3 repo there, checkbox. So we know that. And of course, this is coming up as the only search item in here because it's the only package. So I can simply click on this and click install. And now it's going to make that package readily available for me. Now, of course, if you're doing this in your individual internal repositories and making these packages available, then I encourage you to also include the dependencies in that package in your internal repository as well. It's very helpful for that as well. So now I can start using those humanizer calls right in my code here, which makes it nice and easy. So I'm not going to get too complicated on this. We'll keep it high level and we'll move on to PowerShell as an example. So I'm going to get my PS repository here real quick and just show you that I have PS demo set up as my only repository. I've turned off PowerShell Gallery in this use case just to make this simple. And so you can see NuGet cloudsmith.io/demo/PowerShell v2. And so over here, we can see under demo that there are only a couple of modules in this folder. And so along those lines, here we go. So we have invoke command as, DBA tools, and PS Cloudsmith. PS Cloudsmith is cool. Now I did leave that in there as a plug, specifically to say that we are hard at work on a Cloudsmith module for PowerShell. This is specifically wrapping the PowerShell API. I've recently done a squash and merge over into main for this. So very big shout out to Stevie Coaster here. So Stevie is my colleague and friend in the PowerShell Dev community who has done a large amount of the work, heavy lifting here in terms of coverage for the API. So a lot of the stuff you can do with the Cloudsmith CLI now you are able to just do natively using a PowerShell module. So you can pull down this module. Again, we're working to make this available in the PowerShell gallery as well and be able to make your standard calls that you were able to the API in the PowerShell fashion. So I will show all that off in a second, just a little bit, but these are the packages I have in this feed. So I'll slide over here and I'll actually just do a find module using my credential, of course, because this is a credentialed repository. So that credential is a secure string object, protected via PowerShell and the data protection API. So over here, you can see it's showing my 3 modules that I have in my repository. And installing the module is as easy as install module name. DBA tools and invoke command as are 2 of my favorite modules, PowerShell modules. So shout out to Chrissy Lemare and the folks at the DBA tools and also invoke command as. I will change this to PS Cloudsmith for this demo just to show you that it actually works and kick it off so that the module actually installs. And cool. And now we can do a get command here. And I'll specify the module as PS Cloudsmith. And we'll see all of these wonderful functions available to you. So these are things you don't have to do now manually via the API. These follow the idiomatic language specific stuff that normally you will find in PowerShell in terms of verb, noun, syntax, and parameters. So again, big shout out to Steve for his help with that and helping us build that out. So this is available for you here. So now I've just installed that module really quick from our internal repository. It's readily available with these functions. I would start this process, of course, by connecting to my Cloudsmith instance, providing my NuGet repository API, and then I'm good to go. I can start interacting and seeing my repositories. So yeah, I know it's magic, but believe me, there's a lot of hard work under the hood here that we've done to try and make this available. And again, we are just working hard to try and cater to the .NET ecosystem here and our .NET devs and the Microsoft devs out there. So we hear you. We are working actively. Please check out the repository on GitHub. You can download the module soon from PowerShell Gallery and give us feedback. If there are any issues, please file them. we accept PRs, of course, right? So there's that piece. Yeah, openly accept PR. So okay, so now I've shown off a little bit about the .NET and sort of Visual Studio way, and of course, I'm showing off the PowerShell modules that you can install and make available quickly. Now let's highlight Chocolatey here. So I'm a Choco user here. I've installed choco.exe ahead of time. I can see that I ran the command and I have 0.12.1. Now I can start doing some installs and other pieces of this so that I can show this off a little bit. So let me do a Choco source first, just to show you what sources I have set up. And I just have the one demo Choco source. So that's the only source I have here. Let's go over and take a look at it again, just to show you full transparency here. The Choco feed here, the NuGet v2 feed now, specifically is here. So the Notepad++ install. Oh, there's a Cloudsmith CLI package here too. We'll talk about that in a second.
That's another little Easter egg there.
The little Easter egg I've thrown in there for you. Lots going on, folks. We've been very busy. So here are the packages that are available here to install, right? Now, if we go over here, we can just now use the native commands built into Choco to do a Choco install. And let's do Notepad++ because I know it's here in my repository. And I'll do a -y to confirm. I don't need to be prompted for that. So this will go ahead and just quickly install. Oh, it's already installed, so I didn't need to install it. Well, let's install something that we actually need to install. Now I'm going to get a little creative here. I'm going to actually install a package that's not in this repository. So let's do a Choco install.
Yep.
7-zip. Let's do 7-zip as an example here. And I'll just do -y because ever popular unarchiver tool. Oh, it's already installed. Okay. Well, here, this is exactly where we do a demo live, right? So let me uninstall this package first.
Just uninstall it. Yep.
And I'll do Notepad++, the install package as well, because both of those are referenced. It is a dependency defined in that new spec, like we talked about before. So now if I click yes, it's going to go ahead and uninstall this. And then we will install it to make sure it works. I should have probably uninstalled 7-zip too. Hey, that's okay.
No, I think this is good, Adil, because it shows you that it is absolutely real.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's
happening live.
There's no pristine pre-configured environments here. You know, this is very representative of what a normal day looks like. You know.
So here we go. We'll install Notepad++ here just to show that off, that it's pulling it from the repository itself. It's going to reach out and pull Notepad++ here and go ahead and do the install. Now, this repository is in the UK, and I am in a Seattle VM here. So just for the record, it is going across the world, but it's quick and snappy because we have that package delivery network under the hood, which is great. So here we go. So it installed Notepad++ from our repository, but let's say we do have, I'm going to go ahead and use this here again to just uninstall 7-zip and make sure to show you that that is also available. So this is a package that's not in my, helps if I put a space in there. This is a package that's not in my repository now. 7-zip is not here, so I'll hit yes there, and it will go ahead and uninstall the dependency as well, because I said yes. So now that that's been cleared out there, I will slide back and show you there is no 7-zip here, but once this is done, I am going to install as well.
Yep.
And show you that actually what's happening here is it's pulling from the upstream because I have configured that upstream here.
That's right.
So this is the fun part. Now I'm going to hand over to Dan to show this off here to see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about that. So we do have a slide just about what I'm going to cover here. So I can just put that back on. So
I'll stop sharing my screen. There you go.
Okay. So yes, as Adil just showed, he pulled a Chocolatey package that was not present in the Cloudsmith repository. I know I'm conscious of time. I've only got a few minutes, so I'm going to move as fast as I can. Oh, okay. There we go. So let's just take a few minutes to talk about a few things that we saw there that maybe weren't immediately apparent. So let's talk about upstreams. I'll share my screen in a moment. We'll look at the Cloudsmith repository and how the upstream is configured and why we do it the way we do it at Cloudsmith, what the reasoning is for that, right? Why it's different. We'll also talk very briefly about the concepts that we have of a package promotion workflow, and upstreams are a very important part of that. So that's why we're starting with upstreams. we'll take a brief look at sort of our multi-format repo support and you know, specifically how this applies to NuGet and some other formats as well. And we will then talk very quickly, if we have a few minutes, about the access controls and the security and entitlements and things like that.
And so full disclosure, folks, we may run a little bit long. So
yes.
Feel free to drop if you have another commitment. We value your time, but you will have the recording later available.
Yes, that's right.
But if you can hang out, we're definitely going to answer questions and give you as much value today in this talk as we can. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And I will be as quick and succinct as I can about this. So, you know, I'll have as little sort of filler as I can. So if I just share my screen now, I will be able to show you what I'm looking at. So that looks like the right one. Okay. So can everybody see my screen?
Oh, yep.
Okay, superb. So I am in my Cloudsmith demo organization. It's the same organization actually that Adil created his repositories in. And if we look at Adil's Choco repository here, we see exactly how we were able to install 7-zip when it doesn't exist in this repository. So looking at this feature here, Upstream Proxy, let's have a quick look at what that involves. So I do need to elevate my password here because this is another security feature of Cloudsmith. Repository settings are contained behind an elevated permission prompt. So you can see that Adil has already configured the Chocolatey community repository here as an upstream source. Now, we did mention earlier what an upstream source is. It's a public feed or a private feed, because you can configure authentication here, and that you go to for packages in the event that they are not available in the primary location in your Cloudsmith repository. So why is that important, and how does it work? Well, let's talk about the difference first between proxying and caching and proxying. That's something that is worth addressing. So proxying, as I'm sure most people are aware, is basically where we just get the package and pass it through to the client, and that's it. That's all we do. We go to the upstream, we get the package, we pass it through to the client, and that's useful. But what's much more useful is caching and proxying. So what do we do there? Well, what happens is that initial request for the package, in this case 7-zip, we do just get it and proxy it straight through to the client. But what Cloudsmith then does is we record that request for the package, and asynchronously we then, meaning Cloudsmith, we make a request for that package, download it, and store it in your Cloudsmith repository. Now, it does take a few minutes, so it doesn't appear immediately in this list of packages here, but it will appear after a few minutes. And what you've done there is you have isolated yourself from that public upstream, which means in the event that that upstream is unavailable, your pools and your builds that rely on those packages will still work because you have a cached copy in your Cloudsmith repository. So that's a very important isolation layer there between you and public upstreams. Now, for numerous reasons, isolation is one, but also there's a security aspect to this, because you have versions of packages that you have pulled in and cached, which you can then carry out checks on. You can scan them for vulnerabilities. You can put a whole security workflow in place around these packages. And then when you're sure that they are, you know, they've passed your checks, everything checks out, you've verified the signatures, everything looks absolutely 100%, you can then, and I mean, I'm showing this via the GUI, but you can do all this via the Cloudsmith API. So this is all, you know, you can do it programmatically. But what you can do then is you could move that package over to, say, a production repository that you have. And in that production repository, you don't have upstreams enabled. Everything that has made it to that production repository has been vetted and cleared and effectively okayed for production use. So you still get the benefits of using upstreams. So we're not saying don't consume packages from upstreams, don't consume open source packages. That's ridiculous. Of course, you need to consume open source packages. That's the sort of the bedrock that everything else is built upon now. So, but you still get the benefit of using public upstreams, but you have that control. That's what it gives you. It gives you centralized control. So again, this is with a focus on NuGet, but we support upstreams for multiple package formats, and the repository supports multiple package formats. So that's the beauty of that, is Of course, this applies to NuGet packages. Of course, it applies to any other supported package that we have as well. So it's a core Cloudsmith feature that is now of benefit to the NuGet ecosystem and the NuGet community. That's I think what I'm trying to get at. So does that sort of make sense, Adil, in many ways?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, thank you for that overview. Go ahead, Mike.
And I'll just say that the workflow you just described is the one that I've recommended since about 2016. So the way that I've explained this in the past has been, you want to let your developers do whatever they're going to do on a development workstation, pull any packages, whatever.
Yes.
Prove that those things are relatively safe. Have whatever automated checking you need for your package repository stuff. And then have guards that prevent those from being pulled into staging. So once we've decided, or whatever other feed, whatever your mechanism is, right? Once you've decided, yes, these things are actually needed and we've vetted them, security signed off, everybody's happy, then you just promote it. And then the builds that happen in staging off my workstation can take advantage of those packages because we've already scanned them and we know that they're good to go.
Precisely.
And same thing when you move another level down is maybe you have loose checking on the way to staging and you have much higher standards on the way to production. Maybe nothing can get to production without that SBOM, right? If you don't have that software bill of materials, it's not coming in because I have regulatory requirements and you can just solve all that.
I honestly, I couldn't have put that any better myself. That is exactly it. That is precisely it. There's no other way to put it. And that's what, that is enabled at Cloudsmith. It's enabled by multi-format repo support. So, people frequently work in more than one package format. And
so that's a great point there, Dan. Thank you for doing that, because I will bring up two things here real quick. So multi-format means not necessarily that you have to put them all in one repository, right? So a big part of this is we give you at Cloudsmith the flexibility to be able to define it any way you like. You can host multiple package types in the same repository, but you don't necessarily need to use one. The real power is in the flexibility. So you can define this based on the pipelines, right? There's a dev, staging, production, test pipeline.
That's exactly
You can define it. You can define your repos based on that. You don't necessarily need to do it by package format. So gone is dev-npm, dev-nuget, dev-. It can just be dev, right? And that's the great bonus of that.
It is as simple as that, Adil. And in fact, in this examples repo that I have here in our demo organization that you've seen, I have precisely that. I have package formats here of every format that we support. So whether it's Docker images or NPM packages or NuGet packages right here, that's where you get that flexibility to create repositories and feeds based on environment or based on product or team or whatever structure suits your build and deployment pipelines. Environment is the most common we see by far, and as Mikey said, Cloudsmith will integrate with all the other tooling in your build and deployment pipeline. So with your CI tools, your security scanning tools, your deployment tools, Cloudsmith can sit right in the middle, speak all the native protocols. We have an extensive API to enable everything else, webhooks and notifications and everything that you would expect from something that is so central to your deployment process. And that's exactly what enables that package promotion workflow. And we've, much like Maggie, actually, we've been encouraging it for a while, but it's become even more relevant now with the focus on software supply chain security. So, I mean, that really is the core of package promotion, multi-format repos, and upstreams. And very relevant to NuGet because we've just launched NuGet upstream support.
Yes. And so this is the second point that I wanted to mention, Dan, along those lines. So I will do the bragging for you because I know you don't do this yourself enough. That when we talk about package promotion workflows specifically, we're talking about continuous packaging, right? As an idea or a concept. Now, continuous packaging is new to CI and CD. CI and CD are very familiar in terms of continuous delivery, continuous integration, but continuous packaging is sort of a new format. So for this specific reason, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, then the wonderful Dan and Kira on our end have actually recently released an O'Reilly report, which I'll get Hillary to throw up here as a link for you. So if you want to understand a little bit more about continuous packaging, they have worked with the folks over at O'Reilly to publish a nice little white paper doc on that specifically around that. So thank you, Dan, for your efforts there. And I do want to plug in here because I think that it's an important idea and a concept for folks to wrap their head around.
No, it is an important idea. And look, people that know me and anybody that saw the webinar last week knows that I love analogies. Okay, so I mean, when you look at source control, okay, people don't use several different platforms to manage several different types of source, right? Everybody settles on GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or whatever your chosen source management tool is, and that's the starting point for kicking off into continuous integration, right? Is having all your source in one place, having a CI tool that works with that source tool, that source management tool, and that gets you on the path to sort of an automated pipeline. Packaging should be the same, right? You know, the way you look at packages, and it doesn't matter if you're writing in Java or whatever, in GitHub or GitLab, right? That's largely beside the point. And the same should be with packaging, because it's the concepts that are important of securing your supply chain, scanning the packages, checking package checksums, isolating from third-party sources and things like that. That's what's important. And it's, you know, you need new best-in-class tooling to do that. I mean, you can absolutely have lots of repositories all over the place and you can still do things, but it's much harder to manage, and it doesn't allow you to do it continuously. That's what continuous packaging is about, really. So thanks for reminding me, Adil, actually, because I probably would have forgotten to mention that.
No, it's a great summary on that. I did sort of jump the gun while you were speaking. So apologies. I did throw up a question, actually, because we did have a question in the chat. So I want to thank Wilhelm for that. It is specifically, the question is it possible to define your own package format, or do I need to only use raw package format in these cases? So this is the fun part of this here, right? Part of what to understand, we lost Dan, but he'll be back in a sec. So the fun part of this is we actually have the ability to, we're doing it live, Dan.
Exactly.
To define a raw package format. So what do you get with raw? So raw just means that I have my own package format up there. Of course, if it's something like like Python package or Conda or something like that, we do support 28 plus formats. So you do have that option there. But raw is essentially just saying I have some sort of file I want to put up here. So it actually is very flexible in what you can define it at. You can use it at anything. We roll some security features in there for you by default. We do sign every package with a GPG key, either one we generate for you or one we provide privately, a public-private key pair, if you will. And so that is available to you as a way to do that, right, Dan? Have I done a decent job of answering?
No, that's absolutely correct. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken here, Mikey said earlier that that's what he's going to use for his modules, for his game.
Yep.
So you know, effectively, that's a custom package format for you, Mikey. You know, so
Well, and not just that, but another use case that sprang to mind while we were talking is something that PowerShell has that a lot of things don't is updatable help, right? So PowerShell gives you reference docs in the terminal. But for binaries, how do you get updated reference docs? You kind of can't, right? They're part of the binary. That's how they get it. So what occurred to me was that I can just bundle up my markdown docs and then make those a raw format package, and then just say, get the latest version of the docs for this thing, and then it'll just know how to find it and pull it the same as it already does everything else. So I'll probably implement that too.
That's right. And because you can, this is probably relevant to the question as well, because you can version those raw artifacts as well. So you can request latest, you know, of a raw artifact, which is exactly the way you think about packaging anyway. So, you know, that should give you that flexibility for any file type effectively. And again, all those other Cloudsmith features like access controls, fine-grained access controls, and entitlement tokens, which are read-only access keys that you can create for a repository. You can create them programmatically. They all apply to raw files as well. So they apply to every package format in Cloudsmith. So once you get into that workflow, you'll realize the sort of the possibilities that are there with a platform like this.
And they're kind of endless.
Very good point. Actually, Chris just raised in the chat package tags. Tags, and you can add custom tags to a package, anything you want. So we automatically add some tags when we process a package. So we'll create tags based on the metadata in a package. We do this differently for different package formats, but you can create custom tags as well, and then use those when you're creating access tokens. So you can create an access token that only allows access to a certain tag or group of tags, or even a group, accept one tag, so you can do like negation like that and everything. It's very, very, very inflexible. It's ideal way to provide sort of fine-grained access. So.
A really good iteration on that is one of the other things that raw formats would let me do is just upload a config file. And then I can say that the only people who can pull this config are whatever application team owns that config, right?
Exactly.
And you just like that all just natively works. And then that's packaged, and you can promote that. You can promote a config file in very much the same way as like a package or whatever else.
You sure can. And sort of related to that, Mikey, specifically thinking of the Chocolatey use case. So I know that Chocolatey is used sort of, systems administration, building machines, building sets of applications for different groups within an organization. Well, you could tag certain applications as being for the marketing team or certain applications being for the product team. And then when you create those access tokens on Cloudsmith, you just grant access to those groups of applications. And that means that it simplifies the rollout of those apps, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel and go in and set all,
So
honestly, there's a lot to it. And I know we've gone 7 minutes.
We've gone well over time, but honestly,
I could talk another hour on this. Really, I really could.
Just to show the UI. So I would think, like, even just for a moment, if you wanted to show entitlement tokens as a UI, just to understand how the granularity you can get with that. Before you do that, though, I will put in a quick plug, because this is a question that I've gotten before from folks and an ask from some of our users, like Chris specifically did bring this up early. I will throw this up real quick on the screen if it works. So one of the big asks was, hey, how do I install Cloudsmith CLI, which is our native, sort of tooling around command line access in Windows itself? Because already, I mean, of course, I have Python in a lot of places like Mac OS and Linux, but I may not have all this available to me on a Windows box. So what's the easiest way, sort of Occam's razor, shortest path between 2 points to be able to do this? So to this end, we have actually created a Cloudsmith-CLI Chocolatey package up on the Chocolatey community repository. It is available right now to install if you do add the version number, because it is currently under moderation. And that's my fault. That's on me. I have got some great feedback from Paul. Shout out to Paul Broadwith over at the moderation team at Chocolatey this morning. So thanks, Paul, for clarifying. I will fix those things, and this will be available where you don't need to add the version number, probably later in the next few days. But now you can just do a Choco install of Cloudsmith-CLI, and it's going to handle the dependency of Python and all of that stuff for you as well. So another thing that we worked on recently, just to make this easier for our users to be able to install Cloudsmith CLI in the Microsoft ecosystem, right? More so. So just trying to make it easy for folks to do. So I did want to quickly get that plug in there, because I did have gotten that question before. And now I think we can hop over and you can share your screen and talk about entitlements a little bit. Folks, I know we've gone over, but hopefully this is valuable for you.
It'll only take a moment. So let me just make sure I'm sharing that screen. There we go. Share that. You should be able to give it a moment to sort of share the screen for you.
Yeah, while that's coming up, one of the things that you pointed out that I think this is going to show is previously the way that I would have had to solve having marketing have their apps and having dev have their apps and stuff would be multiple feeds. Being able to not do that sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And traditionally, that's what people did, Maggie. They had multiple feeds, they had multiple repositories, but then that becomes a management burden. That becomes a management overhead. And that's, we're all about simplifying things at Cloudsmith. So that's exactly what it's like. So let's just very quickly touch on those access tokens that I mentioned and how you can use them with tags. So you will see in this package list, we have some automatically created tags here. So a lot of these packages have been tagged latest. And I should also mention that latest is determined by the version, and we support semantic versioning. So it's not just, this was the most recently uploaded package. It's proper latest rather than just a recent upload. So you'll see as well that I have some packages here that have little tags, like this one here has a tag that says pro, and I have maybe another one on the next page. There's a tag that says basic, and there's a tag that says pro again. So you can add anything. The tags can be anything that you want, anything that makes sense to you. And where they come in really handy is with these entitlement tokens. So entitlement tokens, and I have very unimaginatively named some demo customer and test token. I really should have named those better, Adil. I didn't realize I was going to be in here today. So you can create as many of these as you want. You can create them via the API. You can create them via the CLI. And you can also update them, revoke them, disable them. and things like that. So, I mean, it's all, I know I'm showing this via the GUI, but at scale, you'll do this via our API. So let's just take a look at what is a token. Well, as I said, it's a read-only access key for this repository, but what makes it really special are these two sets of restrictions: visibility and usage. And you can also add custom metadata as well, which is very helpful too when you're pulling information on tokens from our API. So, but the restrictions are the key part. So visibility restrictions, you can restrict by a search, and you can use the same sort of syntax that you use when searching the repositories in the GUI or when using a search query in the API. So you can restrict on package name or types or number of downloads or anything. And you can also like anchor to the start or the end and do fuzzy matching, and it's really quite a sophisticated search.
The whole querying language right there.
Ranges of versions, and all this kind of stuff.
Distro, etc.
I've restricted this token so that it's only available for the package formats npm and Docker. So if you go to use this token to pull a NuGet package, you'll get nothing in return. You'll get a 404. But this is also a fully Boolean search syntax here. So you can, like I say, chain these conditions together to make extremely unique tokens. In fact, you could create a unique view on the repository for every token you make. If you wanted that, every token could be personalized and effectively give you a subset of the packages in the repository. So that's what controls access. And then usage, that's pretty straightforward. You can set automatic, start and expiry dates for a token. You can set a maximum number of downloads or maximum number of client IPs. And that's really good to prevent token misuse. So also it's good to prevent maybe a runaway CI process that's sitting on a retry and just pulling packages continuously, using up all your bandwidth, things like that. Those built-in controls are very effective. So that is entitlement tokens. But one thing I should say before we finish there is that we use entitlement tokens in our logs. So when you look at the client logs for a Cloudsmith repository and you see all access to that repository, it'll be attributed back to the token that was used. So that gives you really good analytics on package usage, because that's the other side of package management. It's one thing.
Just a quick update. I do want to let you know that Mike does have a heart out. So we are going to say bye to Mike.
I'm going to blame you on that, Adil.
Yeah.
Suggested we go on.
I know. That's fine. But thanks for joining us, Mike, on this chat. I don't want to keep you on too long if you've got other commitments, sir.
No, it's hugely fun. Yeah. I did not know about this at all. I didn't find the I knew about the entitlement tokens. I didn't know about the tagging. I guess I never noticed that in the docs. But that was really cool to see. That's very exciting.
There you go. Right. And so
or the metadata. That's cool too.
Yep, absolutely. So I will say this was action packed with knowledge here. So I definitely want to say, for folks who could join us for the whole time, thank you so much for your time and joining us. I know that Dan could probably have gone on a lot longer on this, as we want to have him do at some point. But in the interest of your time, I do want to wrap this up a little bit. Hopefully we answered some of your questions, gave you some value out of this talk. And even if you're watching this back later on the platforms, then please do feel free to reach out. Feel free to set up a trial. Absolutely. And that's the big part here. Hillary, thank you for popping that up at the bottom. So that's the big part, is you can start up a free 14-day free trial of any of our types of plans. We give you all the features then for free for 14 days. After that, you also have the ability to have a free plan. Or if you're an open source user, we have open source plans that support you as well. So feel free to hop on and just give us some feedback. Try out these NuGet feeds and these upstreams, because the only way we get better is we get that feedback from you. So we treat you like a full customer any way you are joining us. So thank you so much for your time. And on behalf of my colleagues here, Dan McKinney and Mike Lombardi, thank you so much for joining us. We know your time is valuable, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks, folks.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one, everybody.